we're talking about soul light, the color of the soul, the light of the soul.
Yeah, but you were saying
Right. So when a person, well,
how far down in density they can go and hold the white light. Can you explain that?
right. Okay. Well, as a person purifies, they get the white. Their soul becomes washed clean. Well, basically, it becomes the white. And as we improve in good works and so forth, and in attunement with Jehovah, essentially, then the white light becomes actually more rarefied. It becomes a cleaner, clearer, brighter sort of white. It's like it's a different texture than a denser white, and it's difficult to explain to the incorporeal words, but essentially you can see it with. Well, they talk about it in Olaspi when they were wearing. You had the brides and bridegrooms in white, and then you had the staff or the coming Etherians or whomever, but they were in a white of a different sort, and that's what this is. It's a different type of white, and the higher the white is, the more attractive it becomes. It's like a draw, because the spirit realm, that's the that works on pull, on attractiveness. So this white draws to it, and that's in contrast. I just wanted to mention with vortexia. With vortexia, it's always going forth in corpor, so it pushes corpor forth. But the vortexia goes forth, always looking for the M vortexia. And but vortexia in itself never attracts, so to speak. Yeah. It only goes toward the area of weakest concentration, so to speak. But opposite of that is the soul in the spirit light, which actually becomes attractive, and it actually draws to it. And so that's why S is feminine and corpor is a male, is the son, and S is the daughter of Jehovah. Well, as the daughter of Jehovah, then you become more and more in this white as you progress. And when you descend in the density, meaning into the thickness, everything becomes thickened, and then it starts to become darker and everything, and everything that's close by always tends to equalization. So what happens is that the white drops down, and ultimately it starts becoming yellowish, and ultimately becomes yellow down at the bottom. If you're crystalline in the light, you're not going to lose the light. But if you're not crystalline in the light, you could possibly drop back down into the darkness. And
so can you explain that? Because I always wonder what those numbers were, like they say the name of the God and then they give them a grade.
Right. So if when you're reading Olaspi and you say that so and so has, and they say the grade 33 in Asia or something like that. Well, what that means is that they can descend and hold the white light down into whatever density, whatever grade that they're given there. They can go down into that level, to that density, and hold the white light without becoming yellow, without essentially becoming. Now, what's the yellow with the white? Well, the yellow is essentially the lower represents the lower light. It's the lower foundation. Number 11 in Olaspi, we're told, is yellow. Okay, and what 11 is Druk in the Tablet of Samoin. And what Druk represents is the image or the replication of the foundation, number 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 is completeness. And so then the 11th pulse of the foundation then becomes a replication of that foundation. And that replication of the foundation, but it's always a lower replication. It's always a lower image of it because it can never reach up to it. But not only can it not matched that perfectly, but in the process of going from the foundation to 10, a density has occurred, a moving into the denseness, and this denseness can become, well, darker essentially, because you keep going down the dark, it then becomes darker and darker and ultimately to black. Well, so what yellow represents then is the lower light. It's the lower light compared to the white, which is the upper light. Okay, like the golden chamber is in the 3rd degree of Imamthachava. And you have the, well, during the time of Spita, man became an adult. Now the adulthood, then as an adult, he had to essentially take over the foundation. The foundation was there before him. Now in 11, he's sort of basically taking over that foundation. And so he has to start at the bottom basically and work his way up, and as an adult. And so the Midi of the Spita time was part of helping man. Well, it created it held.
You're talking about the Midi that was created at the time of the Ark of Spita.
Yes, right, and that was a heaven that was meant to help. Well, 2 things it did: helped people, the corporeans, the mortals, who to learn about Jehovah through the Anubi-rites. And the second thing that it was to do was to take those who are on the way down, in other words, of faithists who had become apostate or were falling away from the faithist teachings, and to help them to reassociate, and those who that their job, the mission, so to speak, of the Medians was and of the Medici, which meant the Median laws, the laws of Medi, was to help man to come into association. So essentially, what you have is the Medis were the lower light. They were the middle class. They were the middle. The rise of the Spita represented the rise of the middle.
The golden mean.
Pardon?
The golden mean.
Well, yes, the golden mean, the middle, in the sense that yes, that Medi provided a golden mean, because the faithists, they couldn't reach all the way up to the white light of, and now who was holding the white light on earth? Well, they were the Ihans, but man was being prepped to become a replacement for the Ihans. And so the associated faithists, those who were like, for example, the followers of Abraham, and they were, and their societies that they had, those who were associated faithists, they had the white light. They had the white standard. They had the divinity. That was their standard. And the Divan seal and all that. That was all a part of that. But the Medians, they couldn't reach that high. They were like where the associated faithists were the equivalent of the second resurrection. The Medians were the equivalent of the organic first resurrection. Okay, they didn't have association, but they had faith in Jehovah, but they didn't have the rites and ceremonies and the things that you need to work together in association. Now, a lot of those were the Phoenicians, because that's how they grew up through their heritage of being the shepherd kings and every man's a king, every man's a woman type of thing. Now, a lot of those were the Phoenicians, because that's how they grew up through their heritage of being the shepherd kings and every man's a king. So very strong in that. And so it was difficult for them to reach up to that white standard. But they could reach this lower light, this lower foundation, which was Medi, what's meaning in the middle, essentially, between the world's people or the non-believers, and then you have the Medians, and then you had the associated faithists, and so these Medians, and so they were concerned with finding a balance and finding the middle and proportionality and all that, and you had a newbie with his scales. It's all a part of all that thing. But they were the lower light, and so in the social classes of the king's people, we saw then the rise of the middle class. Before this, as an effective force for social change, because before this, you had the administrators and all that, but they were not independent, more or less, from the king. So the king said, "This you do it." You know, so they weren't really a force for social change. But what Mede did was that, okay, because of the newbie rights, because the higher degrees, well, anybody could enter into the first degree as long as they professed an interest in spirit, and even if they didn't have an interest in spirit, it didn't matter, because they would, if they were willing to go through the rites, they might waken to the idea of spirit. So they weren't turned away. Even if they lied about it, they weren't turned away, as long as they professed. You know, well, just their showing up there indicated, you know, okay, yes, I want to. The middle class, where that came from then, is you had the higher knowledge was locked up in the higher degrees of a newbie, degrees 2, 3, 4, and 5. Well, okay, so you didn't really learn about the Great Spirit until the second degree. And the second degree, and you had to, and now it said, okay, so faithists. Now the wisdom, it says in Oahspe, the wisdom of Jehovah was such and God was such that only the faithists took the second degrees and higher. But what they didn't say in there was that some of these later fell away from, they became apostate. But they still had faith in Jehovah, the Great Spirit. So they could learn about that in degree 2. But what was the second degree? The second degree was basically the weeder out. It weeded out people. Why did it weed out people? How did it weed out people? Because in the second degree, you not only taught about the Great Spirit and the different names and all that stuff, but the different names, I think, didn't come till toward the end. But they had something they had to do in between. They would learn about the Great Spirit, and then they had to go out and live with the poor for a year. But not only live with the poor, but they had to beg for them, essentially, and share their food with them and everything. At the end of 1 year, if one did that, and one still had to continue begging and all that stuff and going about, but at the end of 1 year, then you could learn then the other names of the Great Spirit and everything like that. You basically passed the test, and that was the great weeder out. Because what happens? First of all, when you're out there, all right, you have to give away your possessions except for your clothes and the begging bowl. So the big test then comes. Okay, well now if you give away your clothes, you give away and you have to give away you might even have to give away your begging bowl. What do you got left? You got absolutely nothing. And moreover, you don't know when the next time you're going to get clothes. Okay, and maybe winter's coming on, the cooler weather setting in. So that's test of faith. That's your test of faith. That's how they weeded them out, because God is smart. He's smart. He knows, and Jehovah is even smarter. Yeah, he's the smartest of all. But he knows who's ready and who isn't, as far as, okay, well, if somebody's faking it, trying to make it through because they want the knowledge. They want to get there and figure it out, and they don't really, they're not really all that developed in their faith. Well, this might show that within themselves, yes, they do have a depth of this faith. They take the walk forward. They take that leap of faith. And so essentially not much of that which was beyond the second degree got out to the people, out to the general masses, until later in the darkness and all that. But essentially then what this meant was that the knowledge of like mathematics and architecture and anything that's really complicated and complex, the not the associated faithists, but the Phoenician faithists, we'll call them Phoenician faithists, most of them were Phoenicians, had joined in the Medians, but they were the traders and the importers, exporters of the time, and essentially they taught the king's people the Abram language and and were translators and whatnot. But then their skills, all right. So what happened is, because the Abram language was so much easier than all the other languages, that became the standard language. And so what the king realized, and his courtiers, was that, well, or his council, when you have if you have a larger cadre of educated people, you can get a lot more benefits, because it didn't cost them much to get to learn that language, and look at all these benefits that it got. So if they could get a cadre of people out there, a larger group of people who are educated, they could have better records, better, they could run their kingdom a lot more smarter, because that's what the kings are interested in, right? Running their kingdom smartly. I mean, that's their bottom line, sort of, more or less, at the time, because it was during a time of Dan Hay, of the beginning, and the increase in light and everything. So anyway, so what this meant was the opportunities expanded for the need for these for education and everything. And where did they go? Well, they actually had to go to the Faithists for this, but they didn't necessarily know that they were going to the Faithists. The Faithists didn't necessarily say, "Hey, I'm a Faithist, I'm up degree," but they knew the knowledge. And so the king hired them because they knew the knowledge. Well, but here's the difference now between this and the past times. Now, these people are independent of the king. So they're going to say to the king, "Well, look, yeah, I'll do that for you, but but this is what I need in return." And so they had a modicum of freedom that was granted them, that wasn't granted, in the past. It was never granted that middle class. And so this gave them a power. They were sort of like a separate force in the social order. And because they were Medians, because they had the Mede standard, they were the golden standard rather than the white standard. That meant that they were closer to the people. The people, they were in Uz. They were the organic first resurrection, essentially. And because they were in Uz, amongst the king's people, they became exemplars for them. And of course, the king's people, they looked and they saw these guys. Wow, they got all this access to opportunity and resources and movements that they could go here and there, and they basically had the good life. And they were told, "Yeah, well, you could have this too," essentially. And so a lot of people joined the Anubites. Many. It became sort of like a swell through there. But this was through that yellow light, the middle. This was the rise of the middle, and because previously to this, in the Osiris cycle, Osiris, the first and true son of Jehovah, man realized he had to have an all highest. That all highest became Corpor. In the next cycle, Fragapati, the all highest became Spirit. Spirit, we had the all highest was Spirit. So now in Spita, it was the all highest. Basically, was these two together somehow. How do you do that and everything? And that was the rise. That was the Mede came forth from that to represent how you bring these together, how you be a center for that, how you stand astride these, and unify them and balance them and all that stuff. So all that all became a part of that. And they were this, but they were this golden standard. They were this yellow light. And so now eventually, when the darkness came in, then people sort of neglected the higher, the white standard, the bright standard held by Abram's followers, the associated Faithists. Now there were plenty of those too, but they didn't really interact much with the king's people. They sort of kept themselves separate and aside from them, and sort of in the same way that the Ihans were like I said, they were like sort of working towards being the replacement for the Ihans. Only they were Ihwans, they were Gans, man, rather than the little Ihans. So now it was gradually being transferred over to man, that particular labor, that holding up that standard. Well, for the king's people, they could look at that and think, "Oh, well, that's nice and everything, but it's not for me. I can't do that. you know. But they could do the golden standard. They could you know, reach that. It was approachable for them. And so when the darkness came, then, because darkness comes in, you know, after the 200 years of light, darkness started coming in and all that, and people started falling away from that, and the knowledge that was locked up with the faith. Now you see, that's the beauty of the Creator here, because the knowledge was locked up and everything like that. So people, you know, I want that, I want that, I want that, I want that, you know, I gotta have it, and so they went for that, and so they strove for that knowledge. They strove for that toward that golden standard.
Now we still had that golden chamber in the Masachaba.
Right,
there,
right.
yeah.
Oh yes. Well, see, now that's the thing, is yes, the golden chamber. Well, see, now you have there's another configuration of lights, which is essentially the red at the bottom, the yellow in the middle, and the blue at the top. Okay, and the yellow in the middle, the golden min and all that stuff. And we talked about that's the lower light. And you have the blue up here. Now, what's the red down here and the blue up there? And essentially, red represents spiritual power. Yellow is spiritual wisdom, and blue is spiritual love, being the all highest. Basically, you have three phases in life. You have the childhood, you have adulthood, and then you have old age. And the adult, so when you become an adult, essentially you take over the responsibility of the foundation, as we mentioned earlier. When you have to be in the golden light, to be in the yellow light, means to be able to hold the foundation. It's a lower foundation, but it's a foundation. Because you can't hold the higher foundation. You can never attain to the highest foundation, which is Jehovah himself in his totality. In totality, we are always a lower image of that higher foundation. So we're always here on some level. And
so that's what the yellow light represents, is that right?
That's one of the things that it represents. Yeah.
So
yeah.
How
well,
is that related to the golden chamber?
Okay, so the golden chamber. Okay, so you have this adulthood. So you basically have the red. It says in Oahspe that the first thing that man learns about the Creator is through the Creator's power. That's the red, the spiritual power. The next thing that man learns is the spiritual wisdom. That's the yellow. Okay, you'll learn of Jehovah's wisdom. After that, then, you'll learn of Jehovah's love, which is the spiritual love, the blue at the top. Now, the red down at the bottom, now it's very close to blood. You know, blood is red.
Right.
And so this red at the bottom, that's like the realm of the beast, so to speak. And so when you have the battle of the beast and the hierarchy and and they're fighting and trying to get on top and all that, and the pecking order, essentially. Okay, that goes through through the blood, and that goes through their red and everything. And that's the spiritual power, and that's to maintain order. It's not bad; it's good. It's to maintain order in the beastly realm.
Right.
That's how the order is maintained in the beastly realm. And well, anyway, now when man expresses his beast, you know, he can do that too. But when man when his blood is clean and pure, then he's able to better utilize his spiritual power. So what you want to do is you want to use your spiritual power in tune with the wisdom, which itself is informed by love at the top. So as a child, we go through these three phases. You have the beast phase, and then the animal phase, and that's when the young child, he's developing his muscles and his running capacity and his lungs and whatnot, you know, and as well as other things too. But essentially, that's the time for rapid growth and the youth period. So when you get to the adult period, then that's like the middle. That's the golden thing that he takes over the foundation. The wisdom, now you're responsible for the wisdom. And so it represents essentially the victory over the beast, victory over the childhood, that whole thing. And so in the Immathachava, that victory is symbolized by it means victory over the beast as well. And that's symbolized, that's symbolic, that when you go through the Immathachava in the 3rd degree, you go around and you're assaulted at the corners. And so you have to ritually, it's all ritual of course, but you ritually stand up to, or you're not fazed by it. You're not, you've risen above it, so to speak. It's like, it's victory. It essentially denotes victory over the beast. And while they're talking about the 4 corners there in that ceremony, but they're really talking about the victory over the beast within oneself. It represents emancipation, just like coming into adulthood represents emancipation from the childhood, in that golden state. To enter the golden chamber is to enter. Well, you have to remember now, but it isn't just wisdom. The yellow is more than wisdom. See, because yellow is wisdom, but it's spiritual wisdom. But yellow is also ethereal love. So when you're in that golden chamber, you are in spiritual wisdom, but also in ethereal love, because we have 3 lights. And one's spiritual, and one's the ethereal one, the other is soul. And the soul, so the yellow, okay, represents soul power. The power of the soul. And so remember in our building that we can only build up according to what our foundation is. So corporeally, if we have the red down there, if our blood is impure and unclean, it's difficult to rise up. Okay, but the same thing then is true with our soul and with our ethereal senses, that we can't rise up beyond what our foundation is. So it's always important to have that foundation. So what's the foundation is red down here. So the foundation, as far as ethereal goes, is ethereal wisdom. So unless you tune yourself into ethereal wisdom, which is red, which is in the south, which is where Il and Om has his station, and until we tune into that, okay, with our pure blood, okay, which is spiritual power, but the red also represents, as far as the soul goes, represents soul love. But now the soul being seated in the belly also has the sort of, well, soul deals with forms, essentially. And then you have soul forms and stuff like that. But the outermost realm of that is corporeal forms. And so, in the same way, then the outermost love, so to speak, is corporeal love. So the soul love in its nth degree out there, and the outermost condition is corporeal love. And so you have to have that corporeal love as the foundation, the love of the soul. Now that's why they say in Oahspe, balance between the unseen and the seen, because the seen is the corporeal. So you have to have that love, yes, but you also have to have love of the soul. If you do something for corporeal love, but you mess up the soul, then there's going to be a disconnect there, and there's going to be pain and suffering and all that stuff. But that's why you have the wisdom there, the ethereal wisdom and all that. And so anyway, so when you get to the golden chamber, then you have the spiritual wisdom, and it's an attunement to the ethereal love. Yes, and so what do you have? And then you have power, the soul power, right? soul power, Etherian love, and spiritual wisdom. So all those things are in, and so when you go to the golden chamber, essentially that's the third degree. Boom, boom, boom. You have all three of those in there, in that third degree. And because it's in the middle there, it's essentially the start. It's emancipation from the beast. Just like as a child you get emancipated and become an adult, so through Matachava, and you make it through the third degree, you're emancipated from the beast, essentially. And then you're ready to, just like you're in the third degree, in the third resurrection, you're emancipated into Etheria. So you have this, you're free, you have this freedom, and while in emancipation in Etheria, you're emancipated from Atmospheria, essentially. And so, but here we're emancipated in the golden chamber, in the third degree, we're emancipated from the beast. What does that mean? That means that we can go about our business and not lose our center, our focus of light in Jehovah. And there's symbols and so forth that come with these attainments. In other words, so with the third degree is what happens is that you have to be able to provide a light for others in the darkness. And of course that's what comes with, you know, being an adult to a child, is that when you see the child going this way, you can present light to the child, help that child to see, well, it might be better if you, wouldn't it be better maybe if you went that way instead of that way, because look what's over here, what do you see over there, and what do you see over there, and which way is the best way, and stuff like that. And so you sort of help them in that sense. And that's what this attainment means, that now you're free to start learning how to do that. Just as a young adult, you're learning how to become an adult. So the third degree, when you attain to that, then you'll learn how to become an adult, how to present this light to others and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. And so, and because it's in the middle, you see, that's I mean, you still haven't attained all the way there yet. You're just starting off, so to speak. So that's how it works. You always start, you're a novice, and then you go and you master the elements of your surroundings. Boom, graduation. And then, now what do you do? Well, you're in a brand new milieu, brand new elements to master and all that stuff. So you rejoice if you enjoy, doing Jehovah's service and stuff like that, because there's always something. So
you were talking about purification, so just to clarify that to have a clean blood, that make sure that you have a clear red.
Yes.
That requires the first step is physical cleansing. So
that's right. Daily bathing, vegan diet, and it helps to have the pure thoughts come afterward. Pure thoughts and getting one's intentions straight and motivations and basically learning to overcome the beast. Yeah. And we got to do those at the same time, but you can't do. No, if you try to get up there without doing those, you're gonna go tumble back down, because you can't build on a muddy foundation. Because we are impressed by what we have. So if the blood is impure, we can't. Our thoughts are going to be pulled down. Right. That's right. So we can strive to have holy thoughts. That's right. Like attracts like. Yeah. So the impure will attract the impure to it. Yeah. So it's always you always have to sacrifice to rise up to that clear cleanliness, that more pure holiness that's a part of. And it's not and it's not creation. Just like you just got to be vegan and that's it. It's like, if you're not vegan, you can't make the first step. But once you make that first step, then you've got something to build on. Right. And there's work. Right. There's still work. Right. It's not like, all you have to do is be vegan. Right. Well, that's right, because being vegan, while it's necessary, is not sufficient. Yeah. It's necessary, because you're not going to progress without it. Not very much. It's because then it's something. Then it's well. That's the middle part. That's the organic first resurrection in a sense, but it's the grade 33 to 66. Torn between the man and the beast, because you try to go for Jehovah, but then the beast says, well, yeah, but I want mine, and back and forth and up and down, and so so the idea is to transcend that ultimately. And so when you make it to the third degree of Imatochava, then essentially that turmoil is gone. You're like in the Dahabalaza, a place of peace, and you can proceed in that inner milieu. And it's not like people can't experience these higher states without being clean. They can, because you got the angels, your Ashers, they want to help, and so at times they'll, when it's appropriate, they will bring you in. They will, just like a guitar string tunes, boom, and then you go to the next one, boom, but you try to get them in tune. And when they're in tune, they resonate together. When they're an octave difference, so the angels come as the Ashers. They get an octave higher than you, and they get in tune with you, and they lift you right up there, and you're experiencing all these things. Wow, man! Woo! You think I'm there. Well, yeah, but how long are you going to stay there? See, but that whole thing being lifted up there to that thing, yeah, you're there. Is now what are you going to do? You got to do the things that you need to do in order to stay there. And the first thing, but you got to have a foundation. You got to have the cleanliness there. You got to have the clean, pure red, and clear, translucent red. I mean, you work toward that, because ultimately, because I did mention white being not right, because they talked about the yellow and then the white. Well, there's actually higher than white, and that's the clear, transparency. But that's well way beyond anything that we're talking about here.
Well,
so
that's virtually unseen to us, because clear, you can't see it.
Right, it's transparent,
it's beyond
as they say.
What we can perceive at the moment.
The whole idea is for a person to become one with Jehovah, to find Jehovah within you and do that which Jehovah directly inspires you to do, and it feels good. You know it's going to be good, not in a beastly kind of a way, but in a holy kind of a way. Yeah? That's what we want. To learn to turn from the beast and proceed toward the good. Now ultimately, you're going to be able to help the beast, but until you're ready to help the beast, you might not be able to. But you can certainly go in and try. And it's good. It's good to learn, what one's limits are and all that stuff too, because this isn't all about just making cookie cutter, and it's not a simple process. There's
well, when you say help the beast, what we really mean is help those spirits who still identify.
Yeah, help those spirits who still identify with the beast, and help them to perceive that there's a higher way, that there's a way out away from the beast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because
if you dance with the beast, you're going to get burned, no matter what. It always happens. And so the idea is, how do you get away from the beast? Mm-hmm. How do you get to this place of peace?
And essentially the self. The animal self.
Right. Oh, I want this now. I gotta have it now.
Yeah.
Instant gratification. Yeah. Oh, this, that, me. That's all the beast. That's and little babies start off basically that way when I want food, kind of thing. And so that's. Well,
that's the way that the Creator made the creation. It's not a bad thing.
Right.
And our growth.
Right, exactly. Mm-hmm. And so we're just as children, to him, in the sense that we're still learning why it's good to be good, and why it's wise to be wise, and why it's, all that stuff. And now most people know that it's good to be good, and it's desirable, but then they sometimes they lack strength because of their surroundings a lot of times. Because their surroundings are all down into this yucky stuff, well, that's going to have a tendency to pull
Yeah.
because everything tends to equalize. Proximate
Yeah.
things tend to equalize. Things that are next to each other tend to equalize.
So a change, if a person wants to change for the better, often is not just your own intentions and
That's right. That's right.
efforts.
And as it says
you
in
have to
Oahspe,
actually look around
right,
you
and God
and see
says,
what you need to do to make sure that your surroundings are going to feed and nurture your new and higher intention.
right. Yeah, it says in Oahspe, and God says in Oahspe, and if you've read Oahspe, then you'll understand this. But the statement is, come out of the cure. The cure is, come out of us and be clean.
Which has come out of amongst the world's people, the world's standard.
Yes, come out amongst this. Well, they call it different things, but and even in Oahspe, you know, they call it, the flesh pot of the world, or but basically the self, self-interest and doing things for self, being in a system in order that deals with the self, which is what the inorganic first resurrection is. And we have to remember too that we do not want to put down the inorganic first resurrection. That's a part of Jehovah's resurrection.
Yeah.
The inorganic first resurrection means, hey, I'm going to try to make myself better here.
Yeah.
And I want this, and I want that, and I want that. That's where they are right now. But we're talking about people who say, all right, look, I know there's something greater than that. That's the organic first resurrection. Okay, that's
Yeah.
the start of it, the inkling toward. That's who we can.
Yeah.
That's
So it's not a matter of destroying. It's
No,
a matter
exactly.
of removing oneself.
Yeah.
So
Right,
then
exactly.
they become objective to it. They're not subjective to it, and
very good.
and then they can. Well, that's what it says in Oahspe, that those who remove themselves then form together and only come back in organisation to uplift.
That's right. That's because proximate things tend to equalize. And when you have a great big bunch of good together,
Yeah.
and that would be the white light then,
Yeah.
that's going to be able to lift up. It's going to form that attraction to and people's spirits are going to get attracted to it and become uplifted by it. If you try to come back as an individual, you're going to get engulfed and swallowed up by the beast, so to speak, swallowed by the whale. And you're going to be in the belly of the beast.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just how it works.
Yeah.
Because people, no matter what, but they're attracted to light. They're attracted to spirit. So if you go in there and try to single-handedly try to uplift them, yeah, you're going to get people attracted to you and everything like that. But then you're going to become enmeshed in all these tugs and pulls going down and all that stuff, and you're going to try to hold them all up, and it's difficult. So that's why God says, come out of the cure. The cure is come out of us and be clean.
Yeah.
Now that's a big step, and that can be scary. But where that's like the test in the old days with the Anubites, where's your faith? Where's your faith? Do you have faith in the Creator? Do you have faith that if you're doing the right thing, that the Creator's going to take care of it? Do you have faith in His judgment? Do you have faith in His ability to look at you and know what's highest best for you? If you do, you'll have no problem. And you just go forth and do what He wants you to do. Now, that doesn't say you throw wisdom out the window. If you can say that, and you go out into Uz amidst all the darkness and everything, and you go out single-handedly and whoosh, yeah, you can have all the faith in the world, but it's going to pull you down because there's an encompassing system and order that's stronger than your will, than your personal will. And that.
So what you're saying is we got to learn to create an environment around us. So it's not because, okay, Uz has an environment which is contributed to by all kinds of forces. And when you're in there, you've got to deal with these all the time. But whereas you come into a clean area, you can start to create a beneficial environment. So we're learning to create these environments. But we can't do it if we're in amongst something that's already there and is very dense and is always pushing in on us.
That's right. That's right. That's well
So you
said.
get some breathing space. You come away from wars, you be clean, and you get some breathing space and some space to create, to create in, to learn the craft.
Absolutely. Well, that's it for today.
Thank you. That's very good enlightenment. Thank you, Jehovah, for your inspiration.